Hey, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you all for coming to the Cycle 7 ATP first kickoff workshop in the South. And thank you for everyone who's joining us remotely. My name is Lori Waters, and me, along with Beverly Newman Burkhardt and Alika Changizi, we're the ATP team at the California Transportation Commission. And I think I will first turn things over to Alika just to talk about how people can participate remotely. And then we'll do introductions just for people in the room, just because I'd like to make sure I know people's names in the room. People remotely, we're not going to do that because that would take the whole 3 hours. But I will turn over to Alika, and then I'll be right back.
Great. Thanks, Lori. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 ATP Kickoff Workshop. The CTC exists to make transportation planning, funding, and policy more understandable and accountable. Our workshops can take place in diverse locations around the state so that commissioners and staff can hear directly from our stakeholders around California. We now offer hybrid and fully virtual workshops to allow our stakeholders to participate more fully no matter where we are. The workshop agenda is located on our website at www.catc.ca.gov. Live closed captioning is available on this webinar. Please select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There are a number of language options available there to choose from. Any document from the CTC can be translated into any language that you need. Simply email us at ctc@catc.ca.gov, and we will have them returned to you as quickly as possible. For all of our workshops, we encourage interaction with our stakeholders. There will be opportunity for questions and comments throughout this workshop. For those of you attending through Zoom, you should see the webinar control panel likely located on the bottom of your screen. There you will find the raised hand and the chat tabs. We encourage you to use the raised hand feature as soon as we reach an item to give the system time to acknowledge you. Commission staff will let you know when it's your turn to make your comment. Alternately, you may use the chat tab to submit your comment or question, and commission staff will read those on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link or phone number to access this webinar. These should not be shared with other participants, as this may create confusion for staff when making comments. Please do your best to be concise, and please make sure that your comments add new information. Thank you so much for joining us, and if you face any sort of technical issues, please reach out to me through the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Alika. And I'll just say, I'm really glad that we're doing this at least partly in person. We didn't do any outreach in person last cycle. So I'd like to have people that I'm talking to for workshops. So I appreciate all of you being here. And so we'll just do brief intros in the room, just say who you are and who you're with, and then we'll get going. So do you want to start, Aaron?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you very much. Aaron Hoyt with the Nevada County Transportation Commission.
Mike Woodman with Nevada County Transportation Commission.
Good morning. Yvonne Garcia with the Butte County Association of Governments.
Hi, Denise Sifford, Orange County Transportation Authority.
Sorry, recovering COVID. Louis Zhao, OCTA.
Shelley Kwan, LA Metro.
Marcella Renzi, Santa Clara VTA.
Jose Luis Cáceres, Stanislaus Council of Governments.
I'm Jenny Russo. I'm the SANDAG, San Diego County Association of Governments.
Kathy McKeown, Caltrans, Division of Local Assistance.
Alidor Westbrook, Caltrans Headquarters, Division of Local Assistance.
Good morning, I'm Chloe Lauer. I'm the Executive Director of the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition.
Carl Anderson, Metropolitan Transportation Commission.
Good morning, I'm Susan Huntington with SANDAG.
Thank you, everybody. And I forgot to thank Sandag for hosting us today. As I'm sure all of you know, having a meeting, probably the hardest thing is finding a place to have a meeting. So we were very happy that Sandag was able to accommodate us. So thank you, Jenny. And I want to thank Caltrans, our Caltrans colleagues for being here in the room. Kathy and Allie are here. They are both our partners on the ATP at Caltrans. So thank you guys. And I'm sure we have lots of others on virtual too. Okay. Alika, did those people want to? Oh, and I will embarrass anyone that comes in late and make them introduce themselves. That means you, Sarkis. Okay. So it's been a while since we've done this, but as you know, we've always kind of had this tradition of hi. Could you just briefly introduce yourself? We just did that for people in the room.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Chris Cluth, the Active Transportation Program Manager here at Sandag.
Oh, thank you. Okay. And so in workshops, we've always started out by doing some sort of like inspirational active transportation story. I don't know why I do know. I started doing that, I don't know, many cycles ago because first of all, I was always nervous, and particularly in the first couple cycles of the ATP, it could be, our workshops could get a bit contentious. So I was just trying to find a way to get to kind of lighten things a little bit, but people seem to like it. So we've kept doing that. And, but today, our inspirational story is just going to be about the program itself, because I just thought everybody might like to know what we've all accomplished in these past 6 cycles, because it's really impressive. And this is all of us, us here at the commission and Caltrans, and all of you that have submitted projects and have been evaluators and served on the TAC. We've all worked together to make this a really great program. So we just wanted to take a few minutes and celebrate that. So we have just a couple slides to review the past few cycles. Okay, here's our history. Okay, so the ATP, the first cycle of the ATP was in 2014. The program was established in 2013. It put together several other active transportation type funding programs, Safe Routes to Schools and the bike program, and I can't remember whatever else there was, into one program. And so the first cycle was it completed in 2014. We funded 262 projects and 355 million in total funding. That was, so the funding was a little bit strange in that first cycle because it always takes a while for a program to get started. So we had like prior funding and anyway, but there was a lot of projects funded because in the first cycle, in particular, a lot of the projects were small. And that has changed a lot over the cycles, as you'll see. But still, it was great, you know, funding that many projects in the first cycle. And then the second cycle, 2015, 207 projects funded. We had 359 million in total funding. And then in 2017, which was the third cycle, and this must have been when SB1 passed. So, so we had cycle 3, and then we had cycle 3A, where we funded, augmented the program when we got the SB1 funding. So we funded 243 million, 243 projects for 456 million. And then 2019, which was cycle 4, 120 projects funded, 460 million. So you see the number of projects is kind of dropping here, even though the funding level was somewhat the same. And then 2021, that was cycle 5. This is actually, I think, when we saw the most dramatic change with where we funded 106 projects and we had 460 million in funding. This is where we really started seeing that the projects requests were getting much larger, and the projects were a lot different. They were more transformative, a lot more network projects. So even though our funding had stayed the same, the number of projects being funded was going down. And then last cycle, cycle 6, was thankfully we got a very large augmentation of 1.5 billion. Or about that, right? It was about 1.5, 1. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we were able to fund 242 projects, and we had 1.7 billion in total funding. And so that last cycle, it was great. We were able to fund a lot of projects, not as many as we'd like, but we actually saw that probably that's more the level of funding that we need every cycle. So that's where we've started and where we've come to, just on the funding and number of projects. Can we go to next one? Okay, and this is what all that's done. And this we put this together kind of fast, so do not think that this is totally exact. And, probably somebody's going to go back and do their own research and tell us that this is all wrong, but it's close. Okay. So the percent of funding over all the cycles, 96% of the funding went to benefit disadvantaged communities, and 1,600 miles of new bikeways. And that's all classes of bikeways that we've funded, 170 plus miles of multi-use trails. 56% of the fundings has gone to safe routes to schools, and over 700 miles of new and enhanced sidewalks, and 21,000 plus, which that's seems really huge, new and enhanced crosswalks. But that's really great, because those crosswalks really help the safety for bikes and peds. So that's everything that we all have done. So congratulations to everybody. And the program has changed a lot. I hope it's improved over the cycles, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't keep improving, and we'll continue doing that this cycle. Was that all on my slides? That was all of my slides, right? Okay. Does anybody have anything that they want on the remotely? Received note that the chat wasn't working. Okay. It should be working now. Okay, so Alika just said that the chat was not working, but it should be working now. So please, anybody who's on remote, if you're having any kind of technical difficulties, let us know and we'll get it fixed. So that was it, just the chat. Okay.
Okay, Timothy, I'm showing your hand is raised. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead.
Who was that?
Timothy, did you still have a comment or question? Okay. I unmuted him. Oh, it is. Okay. We can go ahead and skip it then.
Oh, so Timothy did not have a, okay. Okay, so one other thing, if you're going to comment remotely, state your name and who you're with. That always helps for everyone to know who's speaking. Anything anybody wants to say in the room before we get started? Okay, Alika has a couple questions, so we'll go to those.
So the first question comes from Asha asking, can the mileage of each bikeway class be counted or determined?
Yes, I'm looking at Kathy because most of our data we get from Caltrans. Her great staff and Dancy will can compile that for us, I think, right? So
Yes.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, we could.
Okay, yeah. So one of the things with the when the applications come in, that's why we ask for a lot of that data on the application, because then it goes into the Caltrans database and then we can pull it to report on those kinds of things. So yeah, we can do that and then I guess send it out somehow, Alika.
Yeah, we can definitely get that to her. The next question we have is from Jim asking, what is a multi-use trail that is not a bikeway?
That is a off the street kind of path, you know, for biking, walking, and anything like that. So it's, yeah, so multi-use trail.
And it looks like there are quite a few people who are making note that the agenda link is broken on the commission's website. And so Beverly is working right now to include a hopefully working link in the chat for everyone.
You know, I did want to, I was thinking about the other question about breaking out the bikeways. One of the reasons that can be a little bit difficult, and this happens more and more, is when the projects can have multiple kinds of bikeways in one project. They could have, you know, all class 1, class 2, class 3 in one project. But I think that still is broken out. So I think we can still do that. Should I stall while Beverly is trying to fix the link? Okay, so Beverly is working on that. So I'm just going to talk about something. So this cycle, the last couple of cycles, we have tried not to change the program, the application process and the application very much, because it's difficult on everyone if we keep changing the program, particularly because a lot of times people will apply multiple cycles for the same project. So it's easiest if we don't change it a lot. So we're going to try to keep that. But we always have to consider any kind of new policy areas that have come out, like housing has been a big one, connecting more to housing. But for the most part, we will not, I'm kind of taking what some of the stuff that Beverly's going to say, but for the most part, we're not going to be proposing much changes. We do have one exciting change that I hope everybody will like. Are you ready, Beverly, or are you still?
Not quite. I was concerned about the exciting change, but now I remember what it is.
I hope you remember. Okay. So any questions? I hope we can get some good dialogue going today.
I have a few questions that came in the chat.
Okay, good.
Okay, we got one from Graham asking, is there any new legislation that could change the next application, or will someone cover this in the workshops?
Not that we've seen. Beverly, you don't remember anything, do you? Any new legislation that would change the program?
Not that I know of, no.
No, so not so far.
There is the tribal contracting bill.
Oh, okay.
Which will make the program, if it passes, it would bring a lot of benefits to the program. It would just make it easier for tribes to actually use the money that they're awarded.
Okay. Yeah, that's where tribes can contract directly. They don't have to go through FHWA and BIA for getting their funds. So that is one thing that's out there.
We have another question asking, will the PowerPoint slides be available after the workshop? And the answer to that is yes. We will include the PowerPoint slides along with any action items that we identify at the end of each workshop.
And we have a new person that came into the room, so I will ask you to introduce yourself while we're stalling here.
Hi, Chris Carteret, active transportation planner and project manager for several bikeways here.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much. Sorry for being late.
No, it's okay. How you doing, Beverly? Is the link working now? Okay, so are you ready or is there any more questions? Oh,
We have
okay.
a follow-up question. Would the tribal contracting bill apply to currently awarded projects from earlier cycles?
That's a good question. I think it would depend on how the legislation is written.
Yeah, we would need to look into that more. But hopefully when it passes, we can work with the tribes that currently have awards and just see how it'll impact them. And I'm sure Caltrans will be looped into that too.
What bill was that?
Do you remember the number?
I don't remember the number. I will
Could
find
you
it
just
and I'll
blast
post
it out?
Yeah,
Send
we
it
can
out?
send people more
Thanks.
information about it. Our tribal liaison at the commission, Bridget Driller, has been tracking it.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll keep everyone updated about how that goes. Bridget says there's no opposition that she knows of, so we're really hopeful that it will pass. And
Yeah.
I'll also, during this workshop, I'll figure out what the bill number is and I'll paste it into the chat as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that would be really great because active transportation projects are really important to tribal areas, and we have not funded, unfortunately, have not funded a lot in tribal areas. We'd like to fund more. We've tried to incentivize it some, so we're hoping that this contracting issue can be resolved, and that will help the tribes be able to do more projects.
We have another follow-up question on that. Would the tribal contracting bill apply to projects exclusively on the state highways, or is it any tribal ATP project?
It would be any tribal ATP project.
It'd probably be however it's written.
That's true, but it should be any though.
You never know.
Yeah. So, okay, well, now that I see Rich is coming into the room, we can really get started. We've just been waiting for you, Rich. We haven't done anything yet.
Nice of you to join us. Rich
So
Murphy.
I'll just wait for Rich to sit down and then he can introduce himself. Can you introduce yourself, please, sir? Thank you. Okay, Beverly, do you want, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Beverly to continue our presentation and the workshop. And you know, feel free to ask questions or make comments at any time.
Thanks. Next slide, please. Thanks, Alika. All right, so I just saw a question in the chat about this, so this is the perfect slide. So cycle 7 or the 2025 ATP. As per usual, there will be 4 years of funding. So 2025-26 through 2028-29. We are anticipating having approximately about $555 million in funding. So prior to the augmentation, we generally had about $450 million in funding. And then the federal government had the IIJA, which brought a little bit more funding into the program, about $50 million per year. That was technically only for 5 years. However, we are making the assumption that federal funds will be maintained at that level. That's the same assumption that they made for the STIP. Which is why we're making this assumption. So that's what we're expecting. And we have the totals there. So for the first 2 fiscal years, there's about $100 million in funding available. And then for the second 2 fiscal years, there will be about $177 million in funding per year for those fiscal years. Next slide, Alika. Okay, so these are our commission staff engagement principles. We are here to consider all comments. We will take them back, talk about them. We may have to talk to our management about some of them. And we will bring topics forward to a future workshop. We will try our hardest to post workshop materials prior to the workshop as soon as we have them available, especially when it comes to like language for guidelines revisions, just so the work group can have those before the workshop and review those before the workshop. We try to move the process forward. And we always try to keep a statewide perspective, and we are here to listen. Next slide, please. Thanks, Alika. Okay, so the work group, that's all of you. So everyone online and everyone in the room. We ask you to please be respectful of other viewpoints. When you're making any recommendations or proposals, please consider the greater good of the program. We always ask you to try to propose any ideas in a public setting. That's the best place to propose them. Rather than, trying to do it in private, just so the whole group has a chance to discuss the topic and we can hear lots of different perspectives. And then the last one here is please trust commission staff. We're all very passionate about this program. We're all really passionate about active transportation in general. And we want to do what's best for the program, but also what's best for California and the people we serve. Next slide, please. Oh, no, it did. Sorry. No, it's my fault. I don't know. Okay, so the goals for today, we're going to review our engagement strategy, finalize our program schedule, introduce some potential program changes that commission staff is bringing to the table, including the very exciting change that Lori mentioned earlier. And then we will also be taking suggestions from you all about changes, and then we'll summarize action items. And somewhere in there, we will take a break for the people in the room to do whatever they need to do. But also if you're in the room, like if you need water or anything, just please feel free to get up and get it when you need it. All right, next slide, please. Oh, and I am now handing things over to Alika.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Beverly. Sorry, that took a second. Okay, so I will dive into our Cycle 7 engagement strategy. So in the ATP, we've held a variety of engagement activities. So our central workshops are essentially these types of workshops that we're in right now. They're the main workshops that discuss recommended changes to the guidelines, applications, and scoring rubrics. Since Cycle 5, we've also offered branch workshops, and these are region-specific technical assistance workshops. They're more informal, and they're focused on providing any sort of program education to smaller and more remote agencies throughout the state. The site visits are one-on-one time with commission staff to really discuss any sort of potential Cycle 7 or future projects for the program. And then the application debriefs are really for past applicants. And again, this is one-on-one time with commission staff to go over prior cycle applications and discuss ways to improve for Cycle 7 or future cycles. So looking at our cycle 7 engagement, we will be holding both of the kickoff workshops, so this one and the kickoff north workshop in a hybrid setting. So we will be in person and we will provide a virtual option as well. For the remainder of the central workshops, we will be holding them virtually unless we are able to align it with a CTC meeting or a CTC event. And in those cases, those central workshops will be in a hybrid setting. For the branch workshops, what we wanted to do in cycle 7 was kind of find a balance between being in person and being virtual. So for the branch workshops, we held them in person in cycle 5, but then in cycle 6, we were in a virtual setting. And so we ended up finding that for the branch workshops, an in-person setting tends to encourage more engagement and questions from the region. So we would like to continue that effort in an in-person setting. And so because we will be traveling to those branch workshops, we will be bundling or packaging those together with in-person site visits. And going to the site visits next, we in cycle 5 held these in person, and then in cycle 6 we're in a virtual setting. We were able to tour significantly more projects because we weren't having to travel. And so we will continue the site visits in a virtual setting just so that we are able to tour as many projects as possible, and we can provide as much assistance as we can to our cycle 7 applicants. So we plan to dedicate Tuesdays and Thursdays beginning September through March of 2024. Last cycle, we started off with Tuesdays and Thursdays, and after about a month, we quickly realized that that was going to be an everyday thing. We'll send out more information to the stakeholders. We'll make sure that the registration form is sent out to everyone. You'll need to provide your project information, how much time you would like with commission staff, and all of those requests will come to me directly, and I will go ahead and schedule those site visits. We will also be continuing our application debriefs, and these will continue to be in a virtual setting, and these are really by request. So if you have any applications that you are looking to reapply for cycle 7 and you are interested in discussing your score and the evaluator comments with commission staff, please email me directly and I will work to get that scheduled for you as well. Was there any questions? No. Okay.
Alika, I was gonna.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Lori.
So I was going to add a little bit more on branch workshops because, some people haven't participated in all of the cycles to know how all of this evolved. But we started doing the branch workshops because we found that there were certain areas in the state that just were not applying at all, or they were extremely unsuccessful in the program. And so we thought, well, that might be because they don't quite understand the program enough to be successful. So, and when you come to what we call these workshops, which are the central workshops, they're to, go through the guidelines and make changes and things like that. It's not really to get down to the basics on the program. So that was the intent of the branch workshops, was to get to places that needed some more help and they could see us in person and ask us questions that they would be not comfortable asking in this setting, like what is the ATP? Because when we were going to places, they really needed like very basic education on the program. And a lot of that is because in particular in smaller areas, they're kind of overwhelmed with work and they don't have the time to understand the details of every program that was out there. And so in cycle 5, we found that they were very successful. we were able to go to like, I don't know, Truckee, and where else did we go? We went to Bishop, and
We made it up to Humboldt as well.
yeah.
Almonte. Yeah, we really traveled throughout the state a lot.
And it was very helpful, and we had really good conversations with these stakeholders that needed some more help. Last cycle, when we did them remotely, they were not good at all. I'll just be honest. It was like us talking, and nobody asked a question at all, unless we made them. So the only thing that we could think of is that the branch workshops just don't work well in the virtual setting, because people that aren't as familiar with the program, they need to see us and ask us in person. So that's why, even though these kinds of workshops work fairly well virtually, the branch workshops did not. So that's why we would like to do those in person and see how that goes. So if you know of areas that just need us to come there just to, help them a little bit more personally, we can do that. Louis?
Would it make sense if you already did a site visit at a location to come back and revisit it?
Sure.
Okay.
Carl?
Do you have a target number about how many branch and central workshops you want to do for the development of the guidelines?
Not really. So we do a lot of analysis, particularly since Beverly's joined the program. She's able to do a lot of analysis on what's happened in each cycle. So we can identify where there's problems, and we know those now. We know where we would like to go, so we'll be reaching out to those areas. But if someone asks us to come, we will go there if we can. There might reach a point where we just can't, we're just traveling too much or something. So we don't have a target number. We do have some areas that we definitely would like to go to. But I don't know if you mentioned this, Alika, but one of the, and tell me if I'm getting into something you were going to say, though. Okay. So also with the branch workshops, we're trying to do in-person site visits. And it might seem like the in-person site visits give you like some sort of advantage, but actually the virtual and the in-person, we found were about the same in terms of being helpful. But since we're going to be somewhere, we might as well look at projects. But for us to do that, we need help from typically, Sarkis, you need to come up and introduce yourself. We need help with from the MPO to coordinate things for us. So Louis has done this where because Louis knows what his cities or agencies, who's considering projects and who needs help. So we need someone like Louis that can help coordinate that for us and put together a schedule for us to look at projects, things like that. So if we don't, even though if we know we should go someplace, if we can't get help from somebody local there, it's not very useful to anybody. So Sarkis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sarkis Contract, Santa Barbara County Association of Governments.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. Okay, anything else we should talk about that? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Okay,
May I ask, just to follow up?
Sure.
So if it's September through March, you're looking for ideas, locations as early as
now. Yes.
And
Yeah,
we
we'll
shouldn't
start.
expect any limitations on just throw as much at you as possible. If you have budget constraints, you'll tell us what you can and can't do.
Yes.
But just everything is welcome.
Yeah.
And we have to justify our request in some shape or form.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we might have to prioritize, if we can go to someplace that's really struggling, we would probably make that a priority over someplace else that maybe is not struggling as much, I guess. So we'll have to see, and I don't know, it might be that we have to split up and somebody stays back and two of us go somewhere or something, but we'll figure it out. We'll do the best we can. And Patricia has joined us too. So when she settles in, she can introduce herself.
We'll volunteer Grass Valley for a workshop, branch workshop and a site visit
A branch workshop?
and site visit.
Okay.
Can you email me, Mike, so I don't forget? Thank you.
Yeah, I put this in the chat, but if anyone who's not on the Zoom right now would like a branch workshop, please email Alika. We'll have her contact information at the end of this presentation, but you can also talk to us after. We can give it to you.
Okay. Patricia, are you ready to introduce yourself?
Good morning. I'm Patricia Chen with LA Metro, and I apologize for being late, everyone, but I'm very happy to be here and excited about the kickoff.
Very happy to have you, Patricia. Okay.
Okay. So looking at the draft engagement schedule, we plan on holding our central workshops through February of next year. For the branch workshops, as we mentioned earlier, we'll be taking those on between September and March, as well as the site visits. We will be scheduling those through March, where we adopt the guidelines. So we plan to present the ATP guidelines to the Commission at the January 2024 meeting, and we will adopt the guidelines and release the call for projects after the March 2024 Commission meeting. So this is also the draft central workshop schedule. So August 16th is today, the Southern Kickoff Workshop. And we've coordinated with Yvonne. So thank you, Yvonne. September 14th, we will be holding our Kickoff North workshop, and we will send out and post all of that information on our website. We plan to have 4 to 5 guidelines workshops, and you'll see a break there after the week of October 23rd. We plan on sharing the draft guidelines with the Equity Advisory Committee, and then we'll circle back with the larger stakeholder group to bring up anything that our Equity Advisory Committee brought to our attention regarding the guidelines. And then the week of November 13th, we'll be holding a workshop to discuss the Quick Build program. And then we will plan to finalize the draft guidelines so that we will be able to present those at the January Commission meeting. And then the week of December 4th, just to stay consistent with prior cycles, we will be holding a PSR equivalency workshop, and we are hoping to align that with the December Commission meeting in Riverside. And then we'll hold, in January, we'll hold an application workshop and a scoring rubric workshop in February. So one thing I did want to note, this schedule may change depending on how many workshops we need for guidelines. If we end up not needing as many, then our schedule may or may not move up, but we will make sure to keep all of our stakeholders informed, and we will keep you in the loop on any changes that we make.
So, yeah, I'll just thank you, Alika. And I just wanted to add on to that, so if we find we don't need that many central workshops, because that's when we're discussing changes to the guidelines, if there's not a lot of discussion going on, things seem to be getting nailed down quickly, then we could do more branch workshops, which might be more useful at this point in the program. We'll see how it works out. So, this may be somewhat fluid.
Question, are you looking for anything from the regional agencies to help with this? Are you looking to field all the questions from every local municipality? Do you see a value of us being a clearinghouse of any shape or form in this process, or is it just too soon to tell?
So I would say both, because there, a lot of times, the cities and counties or whatever, they can't participate in this kind of stuff. So they might just want to go to you and say, Rich, can you please advocate for this at a workshop? And that's great. Or maybe there's something that is something that the RTPA group as a whole wants. So I think both. Does that answer your question? But given that, and Beverly mentioned this, that we do like to talk about things in the open environment. And that doesn't mean that people aren't going to call us and say, you know, Lori, can you, or Beverly, can you bring this up at a workshop? That's fine too, but we just like to have it in a public setting so people don't think we're doing things behind the scenes. So, and I think Marcella and then Lewis.
Thank you, Marcella Renzi, VTA. Would it be possible to move the PSR equivalency workshop up a little bit? I'm looking at that relative to the RTIP schedule and the thought that particularly with some of the larger, more complex projects, folks might be trying to cross-fund through both the RTIP and later ATP.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. We'll work to either move that up or move it up or out so that it won't conflict with the RTIP schedule.
Yeah, and thank you, Marcella. That is a really good point, but we'll have to work with Kathy too, because it's the Caltrans engineers do the PSR equivalency workshop. So we'll work with their schedule too.
Thank you.
Lewis?
Louis Drow, OCTA. So I think the other thing that some of the regional agencies are doing, we're hosting our own workshops. Do you think it would be beneficial if we just keyed you in and brought you into those workshops as well? Okay.
Yeah, please let us know, because I know MTC does this every year and they're pretty proactive about it, like letting us know when the workshop will be. And so one of us can usually make it to answer any applicant questions. Yeah, so we love attending those. So yeah, please keep us in the loop.
We have a quarterly workshop. So if we were going to do something like that, is 100 cities like enough to, or participants, is that enough to have you guys? And we typically do them in like, the next one would be October. Would that be an okay time?
Yeah, I think we could make that work. If you could just provide those dates to us sooner, we'll squeeze it into our schedule. Yes, absolutely.
100 is a lot of people.
Did Patricia say 100? How about 5? Is 5 good?
Yeah, and 5 is good because we did some workshops where there was maybe 8 people or something, but they were still, yeah, they were very useful.
To be clear, 5 cities is still acceptable. You're welcome. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, I'll go over the ATP schedule for cycle 7. So in January of 2024, we will present the draft ATP guidelines to the commissioners as well as the draft ATP fund estimate. And then in March of 2024, we will hold the commission hearing and adopt the ATP guidelines as well as the ATP fund estimate. And once those are adopted, the call for projects will go out. In March 29th of 2024, we plan to post the scoring rubrics on the commission's website, and I believe Caltrans also posts those on their ATP website. We will hold the large MPOs to submit their optional guidelines to the commission by May 10th of 2024, and the project application deadline, the postmark date will be June 17th of 2024. And we will approve or reject the MPO guidelines at the June 2024 commission meeting. And then looking at November of next year, we will our staff recommendations for the statewide small urban and rural and the quick build program will be released. And we will adopt the statewide small urban and rural and quick build projects at the December 2024 commission meeting. And so any projects that were not programmed will be distributed to the large MPOs based on location. And in February of 2025 is the deadline for the MPO draft project programming recommendations. And the deadline for the MPO final project programming recommendations is April of 2025. And the recommendations for the MPO component will be posted June 2nd of 2025. And we will adopt the MPO selected projects at the June 2025 commission meeting. So I'll pause here. Denise, go ahead.
Yeah, so this past cycle, there was also like a Caltrans review that was really time consuming. Can that be built into this schedule so that we have an idea of when we will have to go back and make some of the changes that they're requesting?
So we can work with the MPOs, and I know the county transportation committees on the scheduling of that and the process for that. One thing that wasn't on our schedule is we're going to hold a meeting with the MPOs specifically about the MPO competitive program, the guidelines for that. And then we'll bring any changes back to the whole group after we have that meeting. We did that last cycle and it was pretty efficient. So we can work with you guys on that process. We'll work with Kathy's team on that process. Unfortunately, the schedule as it is on the screen, so there's two things that aren't really negotiable. Basically, in order for you guys to have enough time, and for us to have enough time to do what we need to do for the statewide and small urban and rural component, we need to adopt it. December is pretty much the earliest, and it's also the latest we wanted to adopt it because we need to give you guys enough time to put together your programs. There is a statutory deadline of June to get everything adopted, which means you guys all need to have everything adopted by June of 2025. So that's kind of non-negotiable, but I think this was the first time that our amazing Caltrans engineers really did such in-depth reviews. So I think we can work on that process a little bit with you guys and make sure it's smoother. I know it was a struggle for a lot of agencies. It was a lot to ask. And I will say that everyone really rose to the occasion and did a great job. So thank you to all of the MPOs and county transportation committees for working with us on that.
Yeah, I'll just add that if there is discussion about kind of maybe even like the type of information that's being requested, because I don't know if other agencies felt the same way, but I kind of thought that there was a couple of things in there that could be handled post-programming. So if there was like less of those back and forth discussions that didn't have to be in that same time frame, I think even something like that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think it would be really good to get, we can even have a meeting with the MPOs specifically on this topic with Caltrans and their engineers to kind of get input from everyone. And then we can go back with Caltrans and see what we can do.
Yeah, and yeah, we can talk about this more with just the MPOs, but one of the reasons for doing that, and it can maybe slow things down up front, but hopefully it helps things in the back end that we're getting better schedules and working through some other, maybe, I don't know, ineligible things or something. So that's the point, is that hopefully we don't have as many time extensions and scope changes and those things. So we're all working towards getting like we always say, the best projects are the projects that actually get built. So yeah, thank you.
Fiscal year 2025-26. Thanks, Carl.
No. Yeah, so how do we address any kind of match funds that are in those early years of 25, 26, if the project isn't selected? And what kind of latitude might we have to reprogram those if they're programmed in the STIP? Maybe that's
So I'm not entirely sure how to answer that question. We have statutory requirements, like we have to do a program starting in 2025, 26. And yes, you can leverage STIP in the ATP. This might be something we need to work out with like certain applicants on a case-by-case basis. Lori, did you want to add to that?
Is there a disconnect in our schedules? Is that what you're saying somehow?
Well, the STIP's adopted in March.
Yeah, so you would have to do-
Afterwards, so you may lock in your STIP funds and not know on the ATP. And if you don't get the ATP, you've locked in your STIP funds. So it's almost a Teresa question. Or
Okay.
Casey.
Jose Luis?
There's that.
I'm gonna make a statement in the form of a question. Last time I looked at the STIP guidelines, don't they require that the phase be fully funded when you're trying to program it? So, using STIP funds to pay for 20% of a construction phase and ATP to pay for the other 80%, I could see this CTC saying no.
You could program STIP for PANED and ask for the ATP for construction, or they'd be fully funded components.
Yes, but he was talking about matching. He offers.
They could
STIP
still
to
be,
match.
it could still fulfill the match requirement.
Yeah, it's over the course of the whole project, not by the phase.
Oh, you
For
can
matching on ATP.
Sorry, you can match ATP by phase? What? What, Carl?
You
The
can use
total
STIP- You
project.
can use STIP as matching on ATP, and it doesn't have to be isolated to the phase specifically. It can be for a prior phase.
Oh, well, that's nice. Okay.
But in
There's
the
that-
SB1 program, you can identify a gesture of match in a phase. You are just, if you're not funded in the SB1 program, then you are required to take an action and disinvest it more, so to speak, or come up with a strategy. In the case of ATP, though, I guess our practice typically would be try to fund a component of the capital phase so it has independent utility, functions as a project. And if we don't secure the ATP grant, we are moving forward with the project anyway.
Yeah, so the STIP doesn't allow you to identify ATP funds as an uncommitted funding source. It's only the other SB1 competitive programs. So you'd have to, identify those, which in this case, with the timing of the next cycle of SB1, which would be okay. So you don't have to list it as ATP. You can, put in that request to the STIP and say, all right, if we're unsuccessful in ATP, we'll just apply for, whatever the next SB1 cycle is or program that you have identified.
Right. But if it's a larger transformational ATP project and
you can still compete in the ATP, but you don't necessarily have to list that as an uncommitted source in your STIP program. And you can just say SCC or LPPC if you're eligible.
So my question then to Carl or anyone is, do we, as you look at the guidelines, is there some sort of commonality that we need to build in how the SB1 program is developed that gives some flexibility of how we bring in discretionary monies to try to match through SB1? And are we missing that in the ATP program? That's a good question.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So I think this is something we're going to have to look at and probably have to talk to some of you to help us understand this, and then talk to Casey about the STIP. In terms of the schedules, her schedule is set for the STIP, and this is pretty much the schedule we have to follow for the ATP, but we probably could perhaps do something in the guidelines that would help the situation.
This is Jose Luis from Stancar. I think your schedule is going to be fine. I don't think it's a scheduling question. It's a strategy question.
We can probably work with strategy. Schedules probably not, but strategies, yes.
So just going back to the chat, someone had asked what the application deadline was, and Alika brought that up. So it'll be June 17th, 2024. And this schedule is pretty much what we did last cycle. There's only a couple minor changes, but it basically follows the same pattern. And also, just a reminder to everyone in the room, please use your mic when you talk, just so everyone on the Zoom can hear. Any other questions or comments on the schedule? All right, well, this is the big surprise and happy thing that Lori talked about at the beginning that I was like, wait, what are you talking about? A big change that's coming for the 2025 program is that we'll no longer be using the PDF application. We'll be using an online application portal. We have some applause in the room. I'm going to go through it a little bit to talk about it. We really think this will be a good change. I know change can sound really scary. I know, because the ATP application is already so intensive, but we firmly believe that this will make things easier for everyone. Next slide, please, Alika. So just as some background, we've been thinking about this for a while, and we finally made it happen. The PDF we know is pretty fragile, and it's also sometimes it doesn't, you won't actually know if you've submitted your application or not. And there's problems with saving. So we really wanted to make things more user-friendly for our applicants. That was our number one goal with this, and to modernize our application process. So we're hoping this will make things easier for our applicants, but we also wanted to make things easier for ourselves. And so this will really streamline the evaluation process. I'll talk about all of this a little bit more in a minute. And it will also make it easier for us to monitor what's going on with the application process. And I'll talk about that, and with the evaluation process. Next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, so these videos, they're just like little clips, and they don't have any sound, so no one freak out if you can't hear anything. So we wanted to talk a little bit about like the benefits for everyone. Yeah, go ahead. You can just play it in the background. Okay, so in terms of benefits for applicants, so this is just like a sample, but we'll have a branded application portal with like CTC and Caltrans information. So within that portal, there will be links to the guidelines, the scoring rubrics, and other kind of technical resources. And applicants will be filling out kind of an online form. They'll be able to save their progress really easily. They'll also be able to collaborate internally with people within their organization on their application. And they'll also have technical help from Submittable. So Submittable is providing technical support to applicants, and they'll also be able to message us with any questions about the application. Next slide, please. Okay. Oh, well, here's more information. No, I don't even know what I was doing. Oh, keep going.
Okay. Anytime I hit next, it just restarts the video, so I can't tell.
Okay. Oh yeah, you don't have to. You can go to the next slide. Okay. Maybe. Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so in terms of evaluators, there will be a dedicated online portal for our evaluators. All applications, if you've ever been an evaluator, you know that actually getting the applications is a hassle, and opening them up is also a hassle. This will no longer be a hassle. They'll all be in one place, so you'll be able to look at them within the portal or download them and open any attachments within the portal. There will be a chat feature within the portal so teams can talk to each other. The score forms will be embedded into the portal, and Patricia is amazed. Anyone who's ever been an evaluator right now, it's probably just their mind is blown because of how clunky the process is. And then they'll be able to easily communicate with us if they have any questions. And then next slide, please. Oh, sure. Yeah.
So we received one question asking if this will replace CalSmart, and the answer is no. This is just for the application process and submittal and evaluation. CalSmart is for project reporting, so you will still need to continue doing that.
All right. And then it's, I mean, all of those things I just mentioned will make it easier for us, but we're also pretty selfish because this will just make everything easier for us. We'll be able to make, we'll be building out the application and we'll see applications as they're submitted. And we'll be able to tell if there's like errors in an application. We'll be able to easily communicate with applicants and evaluators. And I already mentioned this, but we don't have to do file transfers with the applications, which will free up probably about, I don't know, 80 hours of our time. And we can also monitor evaluator progress. So we'll know, we do our debriefs with all of our evaluators. So we'll be able to see which evaluators are ready for debriefs and we can schedule those quickly. So that's just like a brief intro of Submittable, but we'll have more information on it as the workshops progress. We want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with it and that people are ready for it. Again, I know it sounds a little bit scary, but I think this will be a really good change for the program and it'll make the application process faster for the applicants. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Lewis.
So some people are old school and they do want a physical copy. Is there a way to download the full application?
Yes.
Okay.
You'll be able to download the full application. We'll be able to do that too, because we also need the copies for our records.
Okay. And then as a regional agency, we typically ask for all the applications. Will we have access to it through Submittable or will we have to request it?
So that's a good question. It's actually something we hadn't thought of, and someone brought it up, I think, at our TAC meeting. But I think we're going to work out a way for you guys to have access to them, hopefully. If not, we can share them with you, but we should be able to like give you a login and like assign them to you.
Okay.
And then you'll be able to read them. I think it'll be like how we treat our evaluators. We'll be able to like let you guys log in and take your applications.
Can we edit them? Because sometimes our locals ask us for help.
Yeah, so they'll be able to collaborate with you. So they'll be able to like assign you as a collaborator, and you'll be, if they want you to go in and edit something, you'll be able to go in and edit it.
So as a person in the early days who used to receive banker boxes from Lori with applications, I actually just tossed cycle 1 through 3 last 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And as a person who had to upgrade my Surface to view the last few cycles, I'm very excited for this. So thank you.
Yes.
I have a question. With respect to a small agency submitting an application, they may hire a consultant to do that. How is that transaction or access going to be?
The consultants should be able to access. So everyone will make an account when they're going to apply, and they should be able to make an account, and then they'll have to fill out like the city's or the agency's information for like, you know, who's applying, but they'll be able to have access.
Yeah, we got that, I think, that same question through the chat. And I think that's what they were asking, that because they were asking if consultants could apply. So I think that's what they meant, because consultants apply all the time, but I think they were meaning if they can use Submittable, but I don't see any reason why not.
Yeah, anyone would be able to like make an account. So it should
And
be
it
fine.
would be perhaps a shared account. So as the agency or the RTPA may want to come in and offer suggestions to the consultant's work and
Yep, they'll be able to. They'll be able to like allow them to go in. So it'll be fine.
Okay, great.
We've gotten quite a few questions on Zoom. So the first one is asking, will there be an opportunity to test the drive this soon?
Yes. So we got this question a lot. So maybe we can we'll have a subject matter expert from Submittable that's assigned to us. So maybe we can collaborate with them and do some sort of workshop with them. They'll be doing onboarding training with us. And then either we can take that and bring it to all of you, or we can get them to come and do it with all of you. So we'll do something with everyone. I'm just not entirely sure what it'll look like.
We got another question asking, will applicants be able to see scoring breakdown through Submittable as well?
So the scores for applicants won't be visible until the staff recommendations are posted. So you won't, the evaluation process will be like completely not visible to the applicants until after that. And then, we'll still be sending out everyone's, when you request it, your score sheet, so you'll be able to access that.
I wonder if they mean that as you're doing the application, if it says, you're filling out this question and it's 10 points or whatever. Maybe
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I misinterpreted the question. Yeah, we will definitely include that in our, how it's in the application now, it has like parentheses of like how many points it is. So the questions will transfer over to Submittable, like how they're like currently formatted. So yeah, they'll be able to see that.
And then we got a follow-up stating it would be great if we could access a beta version or the actual software to practice with it before it goes live.
I will talk to our rep at Submittable about that. I think once the website goes up, people will be able to like create an account and mess around with it. But we'll talk to them about that.
So first of all, I just, Beverly kind of spearheaded this. So everybody should really appreciate that she was able to do this. And just because we love all of you so much, we did buy like, this kind of sounds like an old expression out, the Cadillac version. So we'll get lots of help and support from Submittable. We did not try to cheap out on it. We really wanted to make this work. And with that said, I wanted to say too that I know we're so excited, but the state is really not on the cutting edge of technology. So it did take a long time, but just even having the electronic application, that was like a big leap forward when we got those. And so we're doing the best we can, but the state does not make it easy to use new technology. So everybody's patience is appreciated. Kathy.
I did want to say thank you to the team, the CDC team, as well as particularly Beverly, because this is really going to help our team as well to be more collaborative and also to save a lot of time. So, and to be efficient. Thank you.
I think Carl had a question. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah. So one thing I was going to ask is if this could be a part of maybe the PSR workshop or something, just to do like a test drive or workshop or whatever with agencies, which I think you already answered. So thank you for that. And then I know a few other MPOs also might have supplemental questions for their regional programs. Do you think there's any opportunity for MPOs to submit, questions to be a part of like a a subcomponent of the application that would be just applying to those agencies within a certain MPO. And then finally, I just want to say thank you, because every time that we go through these workshops, every cycle, everyone's always clamoring for more streamlining and efficiency. And this seems like a giant leap forward in that direction. So just thank you, Beverly.
Yeah. So your second question was how tying in the MPOs. You're not the first person to ask that. So I think it would be good to get everyone together and we can talk about that. I think we'd be able to build it out. So there could be like we could do the regional questions, but we would need to think about how we would do that. So it's pretty like versatile, like how you can arrange things. And so we'll have to think about it basically, but it's definitely something that we can talk about.
Awesome. Thank you.
We received,
no,
sorry, go
ahead. Go ahead, Patricia. Sorry, Alika.
Thank you. Actually, I have a bunch of questions and I really should let Shelley ask her questions, but one of them is like, because I'm just hearing so many questions about test driving, which I 100% agree with. I'm also thinking about, because that's from the user's point of view, I'm also thinking about from the system's point of view, about testing it, like you were saying, the PDF was kind of a fragile situation. What about testing it? Like if a bunch of people are going to test drive it, what about like organizing it to where 10 of them submitted at once, or somehow simulate the situation of like the last day of submittal before the due date or something?
I will say, we talked to Submittable about that and it's not a concern. So I know that the Caltrans system did crash the last day. The server crashed because so many people were submitting. Submittable is not concerned about their server crashing because they host so many applications. So that's another reason why we think it's a good move. We'll probably still be up until midnight on that night anyway, waiting for people's problems to come in so we can help them. So
Shelley just authorized me to go ahead and ask all my questions.
That's fine.
Would you like to hear them all at once or answer them one at a, there's only like 4, or answer them one at a time?
One at a time.
Okay, great. So I'm curious whether, I know sometimes there's things in the application that are sort of, they may be unfamiliar to certain, like smaller agencies or something. Will this have like, I don't know what you call this. I call them gray-ins or ghosting, where there's like a box that you're going to fill in and there's gray text in there to like give you a hint. Oh, it's going to have 4 digits or, something like that. Is this going to have that kind of capability?
I believe so, but let me go back and check and make sure. And then since we'll be talking about this at the North kickoff meeting, we'll confirm then.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then I know like when you go to the tax person and they're like filling in your taxes or I don't know, certain computer stuff, it'll like stop you if you have an error. Will this stop people?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
That's something we will need to work with. So there's a few things we want to make sure. The system automatically will check for errors, but we also, Caltrans has, like in the PDF application, they have some validation things already built in into their application. So we'll also make sure those are transferred to Submittable beyond like the normal Submittable validation process.
Okay, that's cool. And I realized there's different ways to ask that same question. There's different aspects of this. If you get stopped on something, does it stop you from doing anything else in the application, or does it just like tell you, wait, stop here, but you could keep working on the other stuff for now?
You should be able to, the way it's formatted is actually like like you keep scrolling and you should be able to save without having to go back. Like you can skip a question. It just won't let you, it won't let you submit until you fill out everything, but you should be able to save like while skipping questions.
Okay, great, 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 great. That's ideal. Okay, so I think the only other question was, oh, okay. Okay, so let's say you're like stuck somewhere. And maybe this is too much to ask, but is there like a phone number to call?
So yeah, Submittable will have support for the technical aspects. And then they'll also be able to contact us, hopefully not with technical things because won't be very helpful. Submittable will be more helpful, but there's like a question about the actual application question. They'll be able to contact us via Submittable. They can also email us or call us anytime. I mean, our information's on the website. So
hopefully they don't call Submittable and tell them they don't know how to answer the question. Can you tell me how to explain the benefits of my project?
Yeah, Submittable won't know the answer to that. So there will be technical support like inside the system that they'll be able to access. And they can always, anyone's always welcome to call us with questions. We get a lot of questions during the application period. We can't respond on like we can't tell them how to respond to a question because we have to be neutral like once the call for projects is open. But we can like refer them to different resources or things in the guidelines or the scoring rubrics.
Okay, thank you so much. That's the end of my questions.
No,
And
it's a great question.
I just hear you saying that it hasn't been easy to get this software, get this change made. And so for whatever you had to go through to get it made, thank you so much.
Yeah, and Lori keeps giving me credit, but I also have to give credit to one of our admin analysts, Justin Hall, who's been doing the heavy lifting on the contract portion of it. So I don't know if Justin's listening right now, but Justin, we appreciate you. So Shelley, we're going to take some questions from Zoom that have been waiting a while, then we'll get back to you.
Okay, so Jonathan, I know you have your hand raised. You should be able to unmute.
Yeah, I am. Thanks. So this is Jonathan Matz from Safe Routes Partnership. Thanks for starting these workshops early in the process, and also congratulations on this new system. It's terrific development. I just wanted to kind of float this in the air now. I know staff has heard me raise this suggestion before, but I'm not sure if I've mentioned it in previous workshops. But with the new application system, I was wondering if there is enough time between now and June, and also if it would not be too inconsistent with the stated desire to avoid major changes in the guidelines, to see if there was a way to have an application specifically for the combined infrastructure and non-infrastructure applications that allowed for the non-infrastructure components to kind of really be given equal weight, rather than trying to kind of cram that part of applications into a regular infrastructure application type. And I would obviously be happy to lead on a kind of committee basis or something like that, workshops and work groups that would figure out the sort of scoring and questions and things like that as we went along. Thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan. So within Submittable, it'll be actually pretty easy for us to have a more separated application for combination applications because of the way it's laid out. Basically, I think they call it like a logic tree. Like if you select this, like if you select a combination project, the combination project questions will be populated in the application. So it'll actually benefit non-combination applicants as well, because they'll no longer have those confusing combination questions in their application that they don't know how to answer, and then they sometimes they'll write something random because they're not sure what we're asking. So that will help. And I will say, yes, we can definitely talk about the questions. That's one of actually later on in today's workshop, we were going to talk about that. We can definitely talk about refining that combination application to make sure applicants are able to talk about their non-infrastructure projects in a more thorough way. Yeah, thanks, Jonathan.
Okay, we received another question asking, will you be able to print the entire application before and after completion?
I believe so. I know you'll be able to save it as a PDF, in which case you'd be able to print it, but let us go back to our people at Submittable with some of these questions. I just want to make sure I'm giving everyone the correct information, and we can report back at the next kickoff workshop.
Someone's asking, how long will the call for projects period be open to applicants?
So Malik, I can't remember what the schedule said, but it'll be from March, like mid-March until mid-June.
Yes.
It's our normal schedule. And we will, this presentation will be posted after this workshop, so you can go back and you can look at the actual schedule. All right, Shelley.
All right. I have two questions. The first is on the program schedule, there was a postmark date. Are we still sending you hard copies?
No.
Okay.
We just like copied the schedule and then changed a few things, but clearly we missed that. Okay.
Super.
Yeah, please don't send us hard copies of your application.
Okay.
We finally recycled. We have everything scanned and saved now, so we finally recycled a lot of cycles worth of applications.
Okay. We won't send applications, just gift cards. Okay, second question. The PDF was known for being buggy and having multiple versions. If there are bugs in this application, will they be such that they just update one question at a time, whatever is bugged, and then everybody can continue on with their existing application?
No one will have to go and redo an application. So yeah, we'll be able to update it within the system. I'm hoping that we won't have to do any bug updates. Submittable is a pretty well-known company for this type of thing. And so I don't see them having any bugs on their end. And I'm hoping we can get all of the application questions right the first time. So nothing will have to go back and be updated. I mean, you never know, but people won't have to fill out a different application.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else have any questions in the room on this?
So Beverly, I was just going to say that, hopefully that it will go smooth, but there will be problems. There always is. So we'll work through them. And as particularly all of you that are comfortable with emailing us directly or calling us, if you're noticing things, let us know. And then it'll continually get better like anything else. So thanks.
Thanks, Lori. All right, since there's no other questions in the room, before we move on to our next topic, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. So we'll be back here at about 10:40. All right, everyone, we're going to get started because we still have a few things to go through. Please return to your seats. Thank you.
Okay, we're getting started. Sarkis.
Thanks, everyone. All right, so welcome back. Before we move on to the next topic, we did have a new participant join the room, so I just wanted to give him a chance to introduce himself. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Michael Wool. I work at Sandag. I'm an active transportation intern under Chris Carteret. So yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you. All right. All right, next slide, please. Oh no, we're going to watch this video again. All right, so now we're to the portion where we're talking about changes in the guidelines for next cycle. So we'll start with a few of our changes, but there will be time for everyone in the room and everyone online if they have any proposals. Next slide, please. So just kind of our guidelines change goals. We've been working with all of you over 6 cycles to kind of refine the program and stabilize the program. And we hope to minimize major changes to the program just so our applicants don't have to relearn the application process and the application questions. And as Lori mentioned at the beginning of the workshop, CCC staff isn't actually proposing any major changes to the program this cycle. So we do have a few things that we'll present to you, but most of them are just minor clarifications on the guidelines. And we worked with our technical advisory committee to identify any potential significant changes, but after talking to them, we, with them, came to the conclusion that we didn't want to propose any major changes. Next slide, please. Thanks, Alika. All right, so in terms of some general updates that we do, well, one that we do every cycle is updating the DAC qualifying information. So this will just be, sorry, I shouldn't use acronyms. So disadvantaged community qualifying data years. So this will just be going back. We'll keep everyone informed about which data years they should use when they're filling out their disadvantaged communities information in their application. Okay, sorry. There is a box on the screen that we're not sure how to get rid of it, but Alika is working it out. And now Jenny is on it. Thanks, Jenny. Another thing we'll be doing is refining the inclusion of quick build projects in the program. So we did get a working group, some volunteers for a working group from our technical advisory committee. So we've had quick builds in the program for 2 cycles now, and we're still seeing some issues. So a lot of applicants are still submitting small infrastructure projects, and we think we just need some more education on quick builds, and our applicants need some more education on quick builds as well. So we also have some applicants who aren't following the guidelines. So for the 2023 program, we said that they could only request construction, but some of them requested all the pre-construction phases. So we're going to be working with this working group to kind of to refine quick builds and help applicants know what they should be putting in their applications and putting in their projects. And we're also hoping to do some sort of educational workshop with the applicants so they have a better idea of what quick builds are. We really want to keep including quick build projects. It's been kind of a struggle for the program for the last couple of cycles. But we just know these are really important solutions to some immediate safety needs. And so we want to keep trying with the quick builds. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we're not going to be proposing anything major this cycle. We want to do some clarifications in the guidelines. So what's on the screen isn't a comprehensive list of all of the clarifications that we want to add to the guidelines. A lot of them are really, really minor, but we just kind of wanted to give you kind of a sample of what we're thinking about right now. And all of this will be brought to you at a future workshop to discuss any language that we add, but we just kind of wanted to give you a sample of the kind of changes we're thinking about. So the first one, clarify state-only funds notification process. So this is actually something we've heard from stakeholders about not knowing if they receive state-only funds, not knowing if they've received federal funds. So Caltrans districts actually kind of manage that process, but our colleagues at headquarters have been working with the districts and they found out that it looks a little bit different for every district. And so we're going to work with them to refine that process. And we'll also be posting, and we'll talk about this more, but we'll also be posting, or Caltrans will be posting a list of all program projects each cycle and it has like whether they're state only funded or if they have a mix of state and federal funds, just so it's a little bit more transparent for everyone and everyone knows what's happening. Another thing that we're going to be clarifying in the guidelines are evaluator responsibilities and consequences for not upholding these responsibilities. So this is just something that we want to make sure is clear for our evaluators. Our evaluators, I would say 99% of the time are amazing, and they do a great job evaluating, but we just want to make sure that everyone is getting a fair chance and an unbiased evaluator. So we'll also be clarifying the California Conservation Corps or CCC coordination process. This process is part of the application. All applicants are required to coordinate with the CCC as part of their application. This is actually a statutory requirement that's part of the program, and applicants receive negative points if they don't do this process. And it's a very, very simple process, and you'll be surprised how many applicants miss it or don't do it. So we'll be adding we want to add some more prompts to the application and to the guidelines to make sure that applicants are doing this, because everyone knows, I think everyone in this room knows that 5 points can really make a huge difference of whether or not you're funded it. So we want to make sure everyone's doing this. It's pretty easy. We'll also be adding the ATP benefit cost tool as a required data source for post-award benefits gathering. So Alika actually just sent out a template for this for all Cycle 6 awarded projects. So this is a tool that we've worked on with Caltrans and with UC Davis, and it's something we'll be doing to roll up benefits for programmed projects in our benefits report. We want to clarify non-eligible leveraging sources and consequences for not including a leveraging commitment letter, which is a required part of the application. And then we also would like to create a process for canceled projects. I can pause there if there are any questions on those items. Yes.
Aaron Hoyt from Nevada County Transportation Commission. I was just curious on clarifying the non-eligible leveraging sources, whether or not there will be opportunity for discussing what maybe some of those may actually be eligible.
We expected people to bring up leveraging because we discuss that every cycle. So we can add that to our list of topics to discuss. Lewis.
Real quickly, on the ATP costs, benefit cost tool, if that's post-award, is that still going to be a scored criteria then in the application?
No, not at this point. We are, well, I don't want to say we, because it's actually Alika and our student assistant, Peter. They're kind of testing it out right now. It's a new tool, and we're actually going to have a contract. Well, Caltrans will have a contract with UC Davis to refine it even further. At this point, it's being tested, and so we're Alika and Peter are testing it right now on the Cycle 6 awarded projects, and they'll be developing a benefits report that rolls up everything. Yeah, so in the future, we don't know what the future will look like. In the future, this tool may have a different use in the program, but for now, it will be like basically a program-wide thing, and nothing that anyone will be scored on.
So we had a weird situation like 2 cycles ago where instead of wanting to request state-only funds, we actually specifically wanted to request federal funds. It was specific to being able to get an federal environmental document approved. So it would be helpful to have some kind of mechanism in the application to make a request like that, so we don't have to kind of bring it up over and over again at different stages post-programming.
Kathy, do you see any issues with that?
Can you repeat the question?
Like having an application, the ability to request federal only funds the same way that we can state only funds.
Yeah, I think that would be easy to do.
Yeah, I don't see very many people doing that, but but yeah, we could add that as a checkbox. I'm sure Caltrans is always looking for people to assign federal funds to, so it'll be easier to assign.
Rich Murphy, question with respect to the letter, clarification on consequences for not including leveraging commitment letter. So how does that pertain then to cost overruns and the commitment letter capturing how cost overruns are addressed?
I don't really think cost overruns are part of it. So we don't require a match in the ATP, but we do give points for leveraging. So I mean, what we're doing is we're just expecting the funds that you're claiming that are being leveraged to be committed funds. And we just get a letter of commitment saying that you'll be using these funds.
And so then excuse me if I don't recall the process, there's a baseline agreement that's established that discusses the topic of cost overruns and who's responsible for the cost overruns. And is there an opportunity to look at a cost share for cost overruns between the ATP program and the funding partner?
So baseline agreement, we do have baseline agreements like the SB1 programs, but only if you meet a certain threshold. So that's either a $10 million ATP award or a $25 million total project cost. In terms of the ATP program funding cost overruns, that is not something that the commission or commission staff support, and it's not something our management will support because it's a competitive program and we already have such limited funds.
So at this juncture of guideline discussion, is that a conversation that the folks and the stakeholders can raise again, and we can hear the reasons why it's a bad idea one more time? And
yeah, so you guys can certainly raise it, and we can bring this back to our management, and we can hear from people at a future workshop. But I will say it's very unlikely that it's something that our management would allow. But we're welcome. We are open to having that conversation.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
I don't want to put too much on submittable, but is it possible to handle the Conservation Corps coordination process through there, like with their own portal or something?
That's actually a really good question, and I love that idea. So we can go back and look at that, and we would have to coordinate with this. Our contact at the CCC is pretty easy for us to work with. The local conservation corps, because they have to coordinate with the local conservation corps too. I'm not we'll work with Submittable, and we'll also talk to the CCC about that as well, because they'll know how to handle the local conservation corps.
All right.
That's a great idea. Thanks, Shelley. Also, we will have time later for you guys to bring up more topics. So don't feel like you need to bring everything up now. I'm sure you guys are looking at this list and thinking of things, so it's totally fine that you're bringing up suggestions, but we'll also have some more time for you. All right. Anything else in the room? Yeah, Lewis?
This is kind of weird because usually when we're in the room, we get a lot of information, but there's 97 messages in the chat and I feel like I'm missing out on what they're saying. Is there a possibility we can have the chat posted on the screen too?
Oh, let me see. That's a job for Jenny. Thanks, Jenny. No, it's a great suggestion.
So Alika said we will be on break until 10:40 a.m. And then we could read the whole thing.
We're trying, actually, most of them, I think that we.
Yeah, Alika's been reading at least the questions.
Yeah. So
Every question or comment that's been coming in, we've been reading it out to everyone.
Yeah. Sorry, we can't put it on the screen. Thanks for trying. Okay. Anything else? And sorry, just so it's clear, all of this we'll be bringing forward to a future workshop. So we'll talk about this more with everyone. Okay.
Rachel just put in the chat, maybe just add to an FAQ at some point. It's a good idea.
Yeah, that's actually a great transition. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so one thing that we've been thinking a lot about are creating some new technical resources for our applicants. And before I start this, I want to say the ATRC already has tons of amazing technical resources on their website for applicants, and they will be doing a presentation at one of our future workshops. I need to coordinate with Allie, who is the new program manager for the ATRC, or the Active Transportation Resource Center, but she'll be presenting on those. There were a few other things that we wanted to add just because of different, first some ideas that we got from stakeholders, and then also just some challenges that we've seen the applicants have had. The first one being discussing displacement. So in our disadvantaged communities question, applicants have to discuss displacement, and a lot of them, some applicants provide some amazing responses with displacement, but a lot of them aren't sure exactly what to say about displacement. And so we are creating an appendix with some anti-displacement resources, so with some definitions, with some links to some different resources, and with some examples of policies that could be like anti-displacement policies. So basically with this, we just want to make it easier for people to respond to this required part of the question. And we've been working with our planning team on this, and I know rural areas sometimes have a challenge responding to this question. And so she had some resources for us on that, but this is also something that we can coordinate with the Rural Counties Task Force on, getting input from you on what we could include in this. I can see you guys over there chatting, so I wanted to make sure I addressed that.
Yeah, Aaron Hoyt again from Nevada County Transportation Commission. I think that'd be very helpful because I think the way a lot of the programs or applications are worded right now is that anti-displacements or displacements happening everywhere in every jurisdiction, and that may not always be true. And so in some situations in these more rural communities, projects aren't displacing because the growth is so slow, but yet we have to try to figure out how do we craft a story to answer this question, or not craft a story, but how do we try to answer this question? And it can become a struggle for us. But maybe there's some other things we can look at, and maybe we just need to be more aware of what those resources are.
Yeah, and we've been working with Bridget Driller on our team, and she sent some ideas. So maybe at the next Rural Counties Task Force, we can bring that to you guys and talk about that more and get some input from the group.
Yeah, this is Mike with Nevada County Transportation Commission. You might look at our response to that question in the LTCAP application. That might give you a sense of kind of how we addressed it in that one.
Yeah, and actually the LTCAP, so Rebecca Light, the program manager for the LTCAP, she was the kind of she created an appendix on anti-displacement, and we modeled it a lot after that, and we're going to add some more things to it. But her appendix was really helpful. Okay. So another thing that we want to do is create a guide to creating disadvantaged community maps and filling out the disadvantaged community table. Basically, just helping applicants know like what should be in their map that will help us. So commission staff always scores that question, and sometimes the maps can be really unclear. And so we go through and we check every single map, and we check the census tracts. Like we check everything. We spend a lot of time making sure everything is accurate. But I mean, we can only do our best. And so if people can provide accurate information to us, it's the best for everyone. So we're going to provide some more guidance on creating those maps and also filling out the disadvantaged communities table in the application. The biggest challenge with that is that a lot of times applicants don't know which census tracts they should be including. So we're going to provide some more guidance on which census tracts they should be including in the maps and in the table. Whichever tool they're using. It's not always a census tract, I know, because there's multiple tools. Another thing we want to put together is an application checklist. This was actually a stakeholder suggestion. So the checklist would include just the types of things you need to prep to start filling out the application, what kind of data you need when you are filling out your application, and just all of those little things, and obviously references to the scoring rubrics, things like that. We also would like to do a just kind of application tips webinar. If you've ever done like one of our debriefs or site visits, it'll be really similar to that, just more like broad than like having a custom one for an agency. Because I feel like we do a lot of these debriefs and a lot of these site visits, and we repeat a lot of the same information to applicants that that they didn't know. A lot of people have really similar questions about the application, so we thought it would be good to just have like an overall webinar on that. And then related to that, we wanted to put together like an FAQ or best practices document for the application to help people fill it out. So any questions on these? Oh, Carl.
Thanks, Beverly. I think this is going to be an awesome suite of resources for everyone. Do you have an anticipated timeline of when they will be available, about kind of just how far out before the applications are due?
Oh, well, our goal is to do them like when the call for projects goes out, at least.
Okay.
Yeah, like so they hopefully would be available when people start filling out their applications.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, so we received one comment in the chat stating for the DAC maps, we have used CalEnviroScreen for DAC maps. More and more federal funding uses Justice 40 mapping. As this program may be federal or state funding, this would be helpful to have a guide or tips or included in the FAQ.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, great. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so in terms of applications and scoring rubrics, obviously we have the biggest change, which is submittable. But a couple other things that we want to do is ensure consistency between the application question language and the scoring rubric. And this is something that some stakeholders brought to our attention, which we knew about, but we've heard that it's confusing. The way that the questions are phrased in the application aren't exactly how they're phrased in the scoring rubric. So we'll be going through and refining those and making sure they're consistent. Just so no one is confused and everyone knows that they're answering the correct question. We also will be within submittable, we'd like to include references to the sections of the scoring rubrics that people should be looking at while they're filling out their application. We always post the scoring rubrics. I mean, last cycle we posted them a day after the call for projects went out, and Caltrans posts them as well. But during our debriefs, we're always kind of surprised about how many people don't know about the scoring rubrics. So we want to just make it really, really clear that this is a resource that they should be using because it's how they're being scored. Someone had suggested that we kind of put everything in the scoring rubric into the application, which I don't know if we could do that because that would be a lot of scrolling down the screen. So this is hopefully a way that we can satisfy that and help people a little bit more. So look at those scoring rubrics. And then Jonathan mentioned this earlier. We worked last cycle to refine the combination application, but it still needs some more work. So we would like to refine that combination application more, and just to help applicants talk about their non-infrastructure programs in a more effective way. And I'm sure there are other things that we'll be doing with applications and scoring rubrics, but those were kind of the big things that we've been thinking about. Any questions?
Beverly, this is Mike with the Nevada County Transportation Commission. I know the commission isn't looking at making kind of major changes this cycle with the scoring rubrics, and this is, somewhat of a sensitive topic. But I think, maybe if it's not this scoring cycle, it's worth at least kind of starting the dialogue and looking at it. But I have some concern with weighting the disadvantaged community scoring criteria. When we did that, we wanted to make sure we put an emphasis on encouraging projects in disadvantaged communities. But, when you showed the statistics on the first slide, we've had 96% of the projects in disadvantaged communities. And that has benefited a lot of the jurisdictions within Nevada County as well. And I would assume those 4% were maybe from the first two cycles, but I could be wrong. But the problem with that is, and you mentioned it earlier, the program has become so competitive. Like if you don't get 5 points in a category, you're not going to get a project awarded. And so, I have jurisdictions that will come to me and say, hey, we've got this project that we're thinking about submitting for ATP. But if they're not in a disadvantaged community, I tell them, don't waste your time and effort. So, my thought would be as an alternative, and there may be some other way to address it, kind of incorporating either Justice 40 and having a certain percentage that the commission tries to meet, or even if you want to set a higher bar than 40%, and then making sure we prioritize and meet that. But it's just, somewhat concerning that if you, even if you had the full leveraging and got all the other points, if you didn't get those 5 points in a disadvantaged community, those regions wouldn't get a project funded. And so it's concerning. I don't think that was the intent when we created it, but it's just the applications and the process have become so competitive that every point truly matters. And if you miss 5 points, I think the last cycle, we had a project in the disadvantaged community. We didn't have the leveraging. And because we didn't have those 5 points, we didn't get our project funded. In the next cycle, we did get the leveraging and we got our project funded, but it's that competitive. You don't get those 5 points, you're not getting your project funded. So I think it's just something to look at and think about and maybe have some discussions.
So first, I'll just clarify on that slide, the 96% that's benefit to that is not located in. So there's a difference. Okay. And And when we're talking about that the commission is not proposing a lot of changes, that's just us. I mean, this is also to gather what the stakeholders want. So I'm going to ask you straight out, Mike, are you asking that we open up the disadvantaged communities points for discussion in the workshops?
I think it would be good to at least have that discussion. I think the application should have that emphasis, and you should still be collecting the same information, the same mapping, so that we can make sure the certain percentage of the funding goes to those areas. But I just want to make sure we're not disadvantaging, areas that don't meet that criteria, because, their needs and projects are important as well.
So,
And whether we address it this cycle or next cycle, it's fine. But I do think we need to at least talk about it and consider it.
so you're saying yes, that you would like this to be a topic as part of the workshops?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to see what other folks felt, and if there was other alternatives that maybe folks could, come to support.
Okay, so I guess we'll be adding another 5 workshops. I'm just kidding. But yeah, we can do that.
Might have to be a separate workshop.
We'll see how it goes.
I also
Great.
just want to say that by opening up this topic, it may land in the opposite direction that you're hoping. So just keep that in mind. As in, people may reach the consensus that we need more points for that question.
And that would benefit the jurisdictions within my county that have the disadvantaged communities. So that'd be fine.
Okay. Oh, yes.
I would welcome the conversation, if only that it shines a light that it's not really points. We basically have a disadvantaged communities active transportation program in the state. Like, if you're not disadvantaged, you might not get funded, right?
So let me say this again. You get points for benefiting disadvantaged communities. Okay, not in. Benefit to you do get some extra if you're in. And so we have come to kind of an uneasy agreement on the way that we handle disadvantaged communities. And it was because I think it was Sarkis left, but he would remember. I think it was cycle 3 where this just blew up, and commission staff actually proposed reducing the points, and it didn't go over well beyond the commission management. I'll say that. So it is, I understand what you're saying. And, I'll be straight up honest that if you can't get any of those disadvantaged community points, you're not going to get funded. Even, I don't know if we funded any last cycle, maybe a couple.
So in the statewide and small urban and rural component, everyone had received a few or at least one disadvantaged community point. And the MPO component, we definitely funded projects that didn't benefit disadvantaged communities.
Yeah, and I think for the rural, small urban pot, we've come to understand that if you're not putting forward a project that has disadvantaged community benefits, we're not going to submit that application. And with the difference between the MPO one is, the MPOs have their own processes they've established, and they select their own projects, where, the statewide and the small rural, we're competing based on the scoring rubric. So if you don't have those those points, you're not going to get a project.
So Mike, let me ask you then, because if we're going to open this up, let me just make sure I understand that the reason for it is because there are areas that cannot compete at all because of those points.
Yeah, there's potential for a project that doesn't get those points to, not compete.
Okay.
Disadvantaging the non-disadvantaged areas?
Technically, yes. So I don't know, and I know it's going to be a sensitive topic, and maybe it won't be one that we can come to a resolution in this cycle. But I think that at least merits looking at it and seeing if there's a way to keep the focus and ensure that we're getting a significant percentage of those projects funded, but just making sure we're not making it to where if you don't have those points, you're not going to get your project funded. Because I don't want to tell jurisdictions, hey, don't submit an application.
Patricia.
Okay, probably we shouldn't open this up. But I just want to say there's like a lot of points for need. And probably if you didn't get any points for need, you also wouldn't get funded. And so in terms of focus, I sometimes wonder if it's appropriate to focus so much on those points and I just wonder if it's like a logical journey. If it makes sense does it make logical sense that to say that if you don't have those 10 points, you can't be funded? I think we should explore that logic. I don't know if there's like math to it, but I question it.
So
Thank you.
Mike, I think I know how you're going to respond. And because I think what Mike would say is that the points aren't the issue now because those agencies aren't even submitting, right? Because they know that it's impossible to get funded.
Yeah, and I think, the most important points, like the ones that will make or break your application if you do submit, the leveraging, if you don't get the 5 points for, the full leveraging amount. And then 2, if you're not getting the DAC points, between those 2, those are probably your make or break, whether it's worth submitting an application, because you should be putting together a solid application with a purpose and need that's going to get providing everything else.
Carl Anderson, MTC. I think, Mike, I appreciate your comments, and I think they follow a very logical line of thinking. And but I appreciate what Patricia is also saying about taking a look at the data. One thing that I've thought about, I haven't looked at any of the numbers or anything, but maybe CTC staff could do this, is take a look at kind of the delivery rates for projects that are awarded in disadvantaged communities and see if there is maybe an overburden on how quickly projects are being delivered and specifically to these communities. If there is some sort of constraint that, is popping up in the data, then maybe that is evidence enough to maybe loosen the amount of points that are going towards disadvantaged communities in the application to allow, I would say, a larger pool of grantees or awardees in the program. That's just a very preliminary thought that I have now.
Tricia.
Okay. I just want to mention some context, which is that as I understand disadvantaged community ideas, is that they have to do with righting past wrongs, because it's environmental justice, right? And there's an injustice. and there's an injustice that's like a current injustice. But I feel like the focus of environmental justice is looking back at past policies and past decisions. And so from the point of view of achieving justice, there's what we need to do right now to be fair, to make things fair. But there's also an element of righting past wrongs. So, and just to put an example to it, if, let's take a city street that's in a disadvantaged area there where there was, redlining or something that caused that street not to be done as well as streets in other areas. And so, for instance, it doesn't have landscaping on it, or it doesn't have certain safety features. This is a lot of it just sort of is coming from the past. And so to say that, oh, let's have a even playing field right now is maybe not getting at all the justice issues that there are, because some of them come from the past. So I just hope that we could remember that context when we're talking about justice, which equals fairness, is that there is a past element. And I think the idea is to just address things that came from the past. And it may not look like fairness if you're looking at like who's doing what now, but probably from the point of view of the communities that have experienced injustice, addressing those past mistakes, let's say, is what's needed to create the justice that they're looking for. And I'm really the wrong person to be making this point as far as personally, but there are a lot of disadvantaged communities in the area that I work for. And so I hope that I'm successfully bringing attention to that context.
Yeah, and since I opened Pandora's box, and I definitely agree with that sentiment. And I think, from the federal side, you saw that through the U.S. Justice 40. And, I think we definitely need to address that and keep the focus and the emphasis, ensuring that we're funding projects in those areas. And whether we did something that was, in line with Justice 40, or we decided to exceed, that requirement. I think we need to keep that focus. I just want to make sure if there's a project that, doesn't get those points, but would be a great project and provide a safe route for kids to get to school, that, they can compete as well.
Jose Luis.
I'm about to slightly change the subject,
Good.
Okay.
slightly. But if you wanted to respond to Mike,
Use
now
your
would be a good
best
time.
judgment. If you should.
No, so I share all the same concerns that Patricia just mentioned. I think about things mathematically sometimes. What we're talking about is a system of assigning scores to whether or not a neighborhood should get a bicycle, pedestrian, walking, active transportation amenity, or a past wrong righted. And it occurs to me like some of these scores and these points end up being like thumbs up, thumbs down. Like you either have it or you don't, your project is out. So what I want to change the subject back to is the CCC score, the California Conservation Corps score. If you don't actually do it, it's a negative, right? To me, that seems odd. Like I'd actually be curious to see what last couple rounds of successful applicants got on the CCC score. If everyone's getting the, what is it, 5? 0. If everyone's getting the 0, like maybe we don't need that as a score. It's just a thumbs up, thumbs down. And then, you, and so same thing.
Kind of is.
Well, if it kind of is, so is disadvantaged communities, right? If you can't get 5 points, you might as well not apply. If you didn't do your CCC, you might as well not apply. But what I was getting at is, and so maybe there are other parts of the application that function the same sort of way, where everyone's always getting the 5 out of 5, or everyone's getting the 10 out of 10. Are those meaningful scores in the application still? If everyone always gets 100% on CCC, or everyone always gets 100% on, I don't know, something, like maybe those scores are almost watering down our whole scoring criteria.
So, okay, so you're right and you're wrong, because for the DAC, we actually get a wide range of 0 to 10. So I think what we should do is, because Lewis pointed out that, you know, we need to give equal weight to the people virtual. So we will read the comments, and there's a lot. And then there's a couple of people with their hands raised. Then we'll have to put this aside, because this would take up the rest of the meeting, and we'll figure out how we want to go forward. And I will also have to kind of give a reality check on the cycle coming up overall too. So, okay.
Okay. So we received one comment from Deborah stating, I agree with Mike regarding the DACs, especially in recognition that transportation systems are systems that connect DAC and non-DAC communities. With oversubscribed programs, we may be faced with weirdly balkanized projects. Let's make sure that DACs get connected to all critical destinations, DAC or not. We received another comment from Greg stating, yes, please open up the DAC component of rubric in for discussion in the upcoming workshops. Another one stating, also from Greg, as sort of a counterbalance to the so-called extra points for being in a DAC, I suggest a set of points for economic benefit value. Projects projected to generate economic activity, jobs, and revenue for local government. Bike tourism is becoming a topic of interest to local government and planning regions for this reason. Economic benefits from a project have indirect benefit to DAC populations, even though a project may not be located in a DAC. A comment from Graham stating, if we discuss DAC at future workshops, can someone collect the data on scoring that was discussed? We received a comment from Rachel stating, would increasing points for safety and number of bike and ped trips, reducing, let's see, sorry, I just lost my place. Would increasing points for safety and number of new bike and ped trips help ensure funds focused on projects with greatest need? That said, it is important to recognize that many DACs tend to have the most inadequate bike and pedestrian facilities. A lot of people agreeing with Patricia. Andrew stating, I'm still new to my position, but a problem I'm hearing from communities in District 9 is that they may or may not be a DAC, but the real hurdle they are dealing with is lack of funds and or staff to implement ATP and other improvement projects. A comment from, or a question from Graham asking, does Andrew makes a good point that the application and implementation process can be a barrier to entry. Could there be a category for small disadvantaged communities? Deborah stated, Patricia has made such good and important points. I hope we work to implement good intentions in a way that doesn't produce unintended consequences. Anyway, the fact that you are all grappling with this much makes me love California so much more. Although DAC points are included, although DAC points also include benefits too, I wonder if they are scored as high as investment within a DAC. Another comment stating, I think potential applicants could benefit from examples of successful projects that have benefited DAC populations without being physically located in a DAC. Even in wealthy communities with no regional or state designated DACs, there are people who are unfairly burdened. Projects that benefit the needs of those communities could still receive points. Question from Keith asking, does anyone know what percentage of the funding from other grant programs benefit DACs? Maybe other grant programs are better suited for non-DAC projects. A comment from Claire. She wanted to applaud the overall program for threading the needle on a difficult topic. We've weighed many different angles of how to score DACs and feel we have landed in a good, though imperfect place. Comment from Joelle stating regarding Jose Luis's comment, even though they don't complete the CCC portion, they can still apply for the MPO component because they applied at the statewide call. If they don't apply for the state component because they didn't fulfill the CCC or DAC portion, then they can't apply for the MPO component. I'm getting a couple of weird messages. I think someone is inadvertently typing on their keyboard. Another comment from Andrew stating, Keith makes a really good point. This is an issue we will deal with. And then we received another comment that isn't related to this topic, so I'll circle back after we close out this discussion. I did want to allow Nelson from the CCC to chime in. Nelson, you should be able to unmute now.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to respond. I heard two things come up regarding the Conservation Corps. I think one, as far as getting us, set up, we're happy to work with Caltrans and CTC to try to integrate the core consultation process into the new application system. So we can chat about that offline. But then also just to address some of the other issues, I don't think we penalized. There were maybe 4 applicants, I think, last cycle that received the deduction, and they just elected not to contact us. I think we even reached out because just to make sure there was no confusion, and every one of those applicants understood ahead of time that they would receive that penalty. Just in having done this for a couple years, our role in it is one, that we're in the legislation, as a pre-apprentice program. We're a workforce development agency, and so the local corps have a similar goal. And so, that's why we're involved. A lot of our folks, work in disadvantaged communities, come from disadvantaged communities, and so it's meaningful work for them and getting them exposure to those transit sector work experience. So that's kind of why we're involved. We're really more in this for building partnerships and letting, some of these municipalities who are implementing the projects, know about us, know what we can do. We've built quite a few relationships through the program. And so I just wanted to say that that's primarily why we're involved. We're not going to make you work with us if it's not, if it's not reasonable for what we do, or if we can't do it for a reasonable cost, you wouldn't have to use us. And so, I just wanted to put that out there to respond to the earlier comment. So.
Thanks, Nelson.
Thank you.
I just want to say that Nelson at the CCC is a great partner and works really hard with us to check all of the CCC coordination things in the applications. And he did reach out to any applicant that missed it on the last round.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any other comments or questions coming in at this time. Did we want to close up this topic?
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about this as we're talking about it. And I don't want to be scared of the topic either. I think to be honest, have been, because when it came up in cycle 3, I did not know how to handle it. But I would say now, I have more experience. I have Beverly and Alika, but we also have our Equity Advisory Committee. And we have more experts that we can pull in to help us on this. And but I guess it does. I think people get scared of it because it can get emotional, and it can come across as you're on one side of something or another that's way beyond the ATP. But I think if you can give us some time to think about it, about how we can have the discussion to where we can, where it can be a meaningful discussion and productive, then we'll do that. Is that good for now, Mike?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we want to make sure we keep that emphasis and ensure that we are investing, a significant percentage of the program, whether it's, meeting the Justice 40 or exceeding the Justice 40. SACOG does something similar with their funding programs where they ensure, they look at the projects that have the disadvantaged scores or fill those, requirements. And then they, lock in a certain percentage of those projects and ensure that those get funded, and then, go with the next best scores. So I think there's a way to address it. We just have to do it thoughtfully. And, we have groups now where we can have those meaningful discussions and see if we can come to common ground. If we can't, accomplish it this cycle, if it's going to delay this cycle, we can punt and tackle it in the next cycle. But, I think it's worth having the discussion.
Yeah, and we did actually recommend one time using that SACOG. Yeah, and it didn't. We didn't get there. So the one thing that I will say though, that, and we don't want to talk about this too much because we want people to apply, but when you look at the funding that we have and the funding, the requests, the kinds of requests we're going to be getting, the cutoff score is going to be high, really, really high. So that's going to be the reality on points, just overall. Okay.
So changing the subject a bit, we got a question not related to disadvantaged communities. So this question comes from Sheila asking, is it possible to change the statutory requirements so tribes could have their own category or component? And I know Sheila has her hand raised, so I'll go ahead and unmute. And Sheila, if you have anything else to add on this topic, feel free to chime in.
Yes, I don't know if you guys can hear me, yeah, just talking about disadvantaged communities. I mean, I feel like tribes are a very special type of disadvantaged community in and of themselves. And there've just been seems like there haven't been historically that many tribal applicants throughout the history of ATP, but I might have to go back and do the math. And so just for the next round, so I helped a tribe submit an application, and it was part of the urban category. So I don't know, I thought that was a little bit unfair. And if there was if they were part of a rural category, maybe they would have scored better. And again, I'm just speaking on behalf of just the under-resourced, staff issues that tribes have. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila. So a couple of things. So there's a few things I want to say to address this question. So first, There already are some mechanisms in our application that give a boost to tribes. So they automatically receive all disadvantaged community points. So they receive the full points. And they also automatically receive all leveraging points. So they receive basically 15 points automatically that everyone else has to compete for. I would say our problem right now is, well, so we want to prioritize tribes and prioritize engagement with tribes. And that's something we've really been thinking about. And we've been working with our tribal liaison on. Also providing some more technical assistance to tribes that have applied to the program, but were unsuccessful. That's a big priority for us right now. In terms of changing statute, I don't think that's something that we would want to do. I mean, it's something that someone else could pursue. Usually when people propose something that could be changed in statute, it's something that we could actually adjust in program policy through our guidelines. It's not something that we need to open up statute on. We don't really like opening up the statute, so we can do things through the program guidelines, through policy changes. In terms of having like a set aside for tribes, I think one of our big problems right now is that we don't really have a lot of tribes applying. I'm not sure if a set aside would help that. It's something we could discuss for sure with the stakeholder group and get more input on. We don't typically really like set asides. Obviously, though, tribes are important to us. So, I mean, it's something we could discuss at a future workshop. Lori, do you want to add to that at all?
I don't think so. I think you pretty much covered it.
So yeah, Sheila, we can bring that topic to a future workshop.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions or comments or hands raised at this point.
Lori, I do want to bring up is what are we doing as an ATP community to advocate for increased funding levels? You know, what should we be doing? Who do we need to be talking to? It all comes down to how much money we have. And I'll go on record predicting if you're not scoring a 96, you're not getting funded.
Let me talk to Paul and Justin from our Ledge team on the best strategy. Was I going to say something else about? Oh, you know, and this is, you know, when Margot, presented at the RTPA yesterday. And for those of you not at the RTPA, she is going to present at the commission meeting today, so you'll know what we're talking about. I want to find out her data and what it means and how we can use that, because it would probably be very helpful for us.
And, you know, I've said in the past before, regardless of how an applicant scores, that project meant something dearly to that project sponsor, whether they scored a 50 or an 80, or they're all good projects for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, we say a lot that we get very few bad projects. We'll get a few, but very few. We get applications that aren't as presented as well, which is why doing like branch workshops and site visits, that's why they help, because we can give that kind of assistance directly to applicants. So it's a good point, Yvonne. We'll find out a best way to advocate for that.
I want to go back to something that Carl was talking about earlier on looking at some of the data that we have available. I know that it's not very popular with CTC programs to talk about funding cost increases on projects, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. I'm thinking about if we have data on any scope reductions that may be attributed to like DAC agencies, DAC applicants, or project applicants not being able to cover cost increases.
So are you, Carl brought this up?
I
Cost
made no
increases?
mention of cost increases.
Okay,
I was just making a reference to
I think it was
data.
Rich Murphy.
Okay,
Yeah, Rich was
Okay.
talking about cost increases.
okay. So I'll ask you in the same way that I asked Mike, are you saying you want to talk about the program funding cost increases?
I would almost take it a step back. I want to find out if there's a need for that kind of thing, like, because I know scope reduction specifically could be attributed to a number of factors. So if it's something that's specific to like DAC agencies not having the resources to cover either delivery or actual cost increases like at contract award or bid, and that's why now they're having to go back and not provide the full benefits that they initially anticipated.
So of course, there's a need for money for cost increases. I mean, we see that all the time. The problem is, did you see how much funding we have this cycle? And if we start funding cost increases, I don't know how we would do it, because I don't know if it would be first come, first serve. If we set aside 100 million, it would be gone quickly. It doesn't seem equitable. At one point, we even discussed when we thought our funding was going to be lower, just using it for cost increases. But it's not that we don't see that these issues come up. It's just in a competitive program like this, I don't know how we would do it. And I don't think it matters that much if it's I guess it matters if an agency doesn't have access to other funds. But I will tell you though, if you knew the measures that we go through to help agencies that are having this problem, particularly Kathy's engineering staff, on trying to help with the scope, I don't know, we will spend, I don't know how many hundreds of hours on one project, just trying to come up with a way to help as much as we can, retaining the benefits and not having to burden the agency with putting in more funds. Sometimes we can't do it, but probably at least 80% of the time we can. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yes, Kathy's engineers definitely work their magic. And they work really closely with us and with the agencies to come up with a solution that works for everyone.
So that's how we've dealt with it, is through trying to be flexible on scope changes. And I'll go back to what you talked about before. This is another reason that Caltrans is looking at all of the cost estimates to make sure that they are as reasonable as they can be. And you know, they've caught a lot of these things that we didn't used to. So, you know, that's what we can do. But if you want, we could put this as a topic for workshops.
I think mostly I just would like for us to know what that data snapshot looks like so that we know if there is a need.
What data?
If we have like reasons attached to some of the scope reductions that we've seen in the past cycles.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay. We received a couple other comments and questions coming in. One from Dale asking, do we know why more tribes aren't applying? And so I know we've kind of touched on this a few times, but we are planning on coordinating with the tribes more directly, and we'll be working with our tribal liaison at the CTC and at Caltrans just to get more information. I assume it is tied to the lack of resources based on conversations that we've had with tribes in the past. But that's definitely something we can look into more and circle back with the stakeholder group. A couple comments, let's see here. This one is from Timothy stating, with regard to the DAC scoring conversation, I think the frustration is that it is a very quantitative all or nothing scoring system. Could we add an area to the DAC question for jurisdictions to provide a qualitative description of the benefit to disadvantaged communities and residents? For instance, everyone in a region, including a DAC, would benefit from a Class 1 facility, even if it's not directly located in a DAC, especially if the connections to the facility within the DAC already exist. And I'll turn it over to Beverly to respond to that.
So there is a qualitative component to the DAC question. 2 points go to location, and then 4 points go to severity, and then 4 points go to your narrative where you describe how your project benefits a disadvantaged community. And this is actually how a lot of our projects that aren't directly located within a DAC get their points. So they may they use the other category and they kind of explain how they can use the other category. So they discuss the population that they're targeting in that section. And then in the narrative component, they are describing like how those disadvantaged community members will be using the facility despite the project not being located in that disadvantaged community.
Great, thanks, Beverly. Another comment, this one is from Eric stating, from a public agency staff perspective, I hope we can discuss over the next few months if all the information requested in the application is necessary or opportunities to streamline. Also, I recall significant time being spent producing maps. Could Submittable provide a solution where we can draw our project in and it automatically calculates the DAC, school, enrollment boundaries, crashes, and points of interest? This may assist jurisdictions who don't have staff with mapping capacity.
I don't know if Submittable can do that. I can check. It's not something they ever discussed with us, but we can look into that. And then we are definitely going to be providing, as I mentioned earlier, another resource to help applicants create their maps. And then, over the workshops, we'll be discussing kind of streamlining the application as well.
Thanks, Beverly. We received a comment from Deborah responding to another attendee regarding environmental justice tool and Justice 40. Let's see. One comment. Final comment from Robin stating, yes, absolutely, cost increases are an issue due to rampant inflation, or at least making scope changes much easier. That's all I'm seeing at this time.
Sorry, but Patricia, before it gets you, I know Jose Luis had his hand up.
Yeah, briefly, just on the cost estimate thing, I wanted to clarify, does Caltrans review cost estimates and then say, nah, 6 million is not enough. You should be asking for 6.5 or 7. Like, are we actively changing their cost estimate before it goes to, I guess, approval?
So I'm not in the weeds on the evaluations that they do, but I do know that they look at the cost estimates to make sure that we're not missing any big items, that there's not like a big bust, that, we do, some level of evaluations. We try to get into it so that there's not a huge bust. And also, looking at the, just the overall scope of the project. And we also look at, whether they are proposing things that are ineligible. So we kind of do that overall check. The technical team does.
Does anyone know if a cost gets to go up after submittal?
No, it doesn't.
So then that's the thing. So my follow-up is a question on that. I think it's really hard to give anyone more money after the CTC has already voted and they've experienced a cost estimate. But if you could do anything for cost estimation, it would be to help that sponsor find their miscalculation before it got voted.
So I will say that Caltrans does a PSR equivalency workshop every cycle where they go over how to put together your cost estimate. I mean, we could also work with them to put together some more resources for applicants on putting together the cost estimate. Yeah, I will say that they are doing a lot of work on that already, but we can do more.
Yeah, and I would say, Kathy just has 3 engineers doing this for, like 450 projects last cycle. And, there is an expectation that the cost estimate is being filled out by an engineer that theoretically knows how to do it, and they sign it and everything. So it's not really their job to catch everything that's going to happen. Does that answer?
No, just if there was any room for improvement in anything, it would be not after a vote, but you'd want to do it before the vote. And maybe MPOs or RTPAs can show up at some point with our expertise and say, whoa, no one's ever done an ATP project like this for that amount before.
What do you mean before a vote? I'm confused on what exactly.
When the CTC actually adopts its active transportation program, those projects and those dollar amounts are pretty fixed.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to go. But before a sponsor submits an application, they have an opportunity to pick the right dollar amount, right? But once it's been submitted, that's when Caltrans would review the cost estimates. So if you had a chance to find something wrong and to fix it, it would be in between submittal, but before publication of recommended projects.
Which they do.
We're doing that, yeah.
And that was my question. Do we change?
Yeah.
Do we actually see the
I don't know
cost
if we
change?
actually changed any costs last
We
cycle.
do not change the cost, no.
So then, Carl, I'm not understanding your question. When your answer, you say that's what we do.
Not we, Caltrans does that. They provide commentary or review, but they don't necessarily say, hey, these costs are specifically wrong, because they don't know the specific bidding environment of that specific
Okay,
city.
so we can, and we'll talk with Kathy and her staff about this. The problem is though, I don't know if we want to do too much of calling up agencies saying, you should have asked for more money. Because we have to know what the request is, and so we know what we're working towards. And so, but we can look into that if there's anything we can do.
And it almost sounds like what you're asking for is maybe a toolbox to help the agencies be better at doing their estimation. Is that what you're asking for, Louise? Because we're not going to be able to get in the weeds on every single project.
I probably share even more than most concerns about what funding is going to look like 4 and 5 years from now. It costs. I don't even know what bread's going to cost 5 years from now, and I get a little nervous. We have I'm in a disadvantaged community. My whole region is a giant red mark in California. And I've got agencies that just see even applying for ATP as being very difficult. And even if an engineer signs that thing, I'm skeptical that they've looked at what asphalt and what all these other costs might be 5 years into the future, and that they're going to have, even the best engineer is going to have an accurate crystal ball of what costs are going to be. And then when they have to make up that delta between what they thought it would cost and what it actually costs with their tiny amount of local dollars, I get nervous, but I don't know what the solution is other than you can't fix it after the CTC's voted. Like you just can't do it. You got to do it before the CTC votes. Yeah.
If I may just add to this, I know we're running late here on time. Aaron Hoyt from NCTC. I think I'd add in there's cost increases because, as we saw in Margot Yap's presentation the other day, costs continue to go up on the order of 7 to 10% over multiple years. So there's that. And I don't know whether there's flexibility or wiggle room in the cost estimate templates for the PSRs to say contingency rather than 10% or 20%. I can't remember what it is, but I know that contingency decreases as you go through your engineering phases of your project. Now, maybe there's somehow a factor tied to that that goes back to CPI over the last few years, because then, okay, now you're building a little bit more variability that's going to increase your cost. Maybe you could look at it that. That's something I don't think that we're going to be able to control. I think where we may have some controls on those engineering estimates, making sure that the engineer you select, whether it's internally or externally, knows what they're doing and they're using the most conservative assumptions possible. But I think the bigger issue is when we're funding projects from PAED all the way through construction, there's so much variability in there. There's so much unknown. I think that's really a lot of where the risk is. So I want to ask staff, CTC staff, to go back and dig through of who had cost increases and how do you downscope. You know, the question might be, what things were found in certain projects that then bumped in the cost? Because if you're going into older areas, you're going to find a lot of things that aren't as built. So you're going to find pipelines that are not marked. You're going to find, you know, electrical conduit that wasn't there. And then all of a sudden, if you have to deal with any of the utilities companies on relocations, that's a whole nother thing. So to cut this short, I think there's a lot of unknowns. And when we're funding PAD through construction, that's where the risk comes in. And maybe if we really want to tackle cost increases, we're going to fund you PAD through right away, or PAD through engineering, and then deal something later. But that's another big contingent issue that I don't think we want to tap into at this point in time.
So we're going to have to wrap up, but I just want to say one thing, because I keep having this memory of Desiree saying something about, can't they request more than 10%?
I thought they could.
I thought they could
I thought they
too.
could. I think, you know, we'd have to look at the guidelines, but I think if you can give good justification and background on why you have increased, you know, based on factual evidence, I think it would be something that would be considered and can be discussed at the workshops. That's something that definitely seems to be a good idea.
Desiree just responded saying, yes, they can. You can request more than 10% contingency in the Excel estimate form.
Okay, I think
Thanks, Desiree.
Patricia and then Lewis. And then
you so
we are
much.
going to have to wrap up.
Thank you, Lori. I know we're running late. Okay, I just wanted to say for the record, if we could please consider the needs and disadvantaged status of tribes that do not have federal recognition.
Actually, Patricia, we will look into, I've actually been talking to our tribal liaison about that and like what the ramifications of that would be. So that's something that we can check back with the group on.
Lewis?
Okay, so I was actually going to ask the same question, if there was a distinguishing difference between federal versus non-federally recognized tribes. But I also agree with Aaron. I think I brought this comment up, sorry, Lori, like cycle 2. But whenever we did the PAED through construction, I think that's where we're going to start seeing some issues with cost increases. The one question I have is whether or not we ask agencies to do their estimates based off of year of expenditure and just add inflation costs to it, because that may be one way to minimize the cost increases. I'm not certain if that's what's being done. And on top of that, you know, increase contingencies or something to cover for those.
So we can, Desiree was going to be here today, but she was sick. So, and she would be very helpful in this discussion, but hopefully she can come to the next kickoff workshop and we can talk about this more. So we're going to have to wrap up. We did have some comments on here, but I don't think we can. I wanted to end by yesterday, Aaron, you asked me if we were going to go the full 3 hours. And what did I tell you? Yes. And that was your boss that started. So anyway, but I love that we have these kinds of discussions at our ATP workshops, because they are really good and you gave us a lot to think about. As much as I would like to just talk about inspirational active transportation stories the whole time, we do have to talk about these difficult subjects. So so thank you all. Beverly, do you want to anything else?
Yeah, so we won't summarize action items now, but we will, I think we ended, did we send them out last year or did we just post them?
We just
Okay, so we'll post the action items from the meeting that Alika mainly has noted. I've noted a few too, but Alika has a huge list here. So once we get those posted, take a look at those. And if there's anything that we missed on there, just let us know and we can add it to the list. And then if you didn't have a chance, if you have had an idea to propose today that you didn't have a chance to propose because we ran out of time, please participate in the Northern workshop. They're only north and south because we want to be like in both places to give people a chance to come in person if they want to, but it doesn't matter where you are in the state. You can still participate in those. So like, please participate in that, whether it's in person or virtually. And I think that's it. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody that participated virtually too.